All right, guys. So, got a new GoPro. The old GoPro, or the last GoPro I bought, was a used one, and it got to the point where when you turned it on and you tried recording, the screen would just flash. So, I gave up. I just decided to go ahead and buy a brand new one. Now, I did get another 9. I've had 7s, and I've had a 9. And the last one I just had that I bought used was a 7. So I decided to get another 9 because it has a screen on the front that I can see myself in. The 7 doesn't have that. And anyway, I've come out and I've done a video already, a really long walk and talk update video, and it's doing the same thing the other 9 did. It's not chaptering, which means it usually cuts off at like 7, 8, or 9 minutes, and then it should automatically put in the other chapter and it shows up as 2 videos. But this is not doing that. It just shows 1 video, and then when you watch it, it's only like 7, 8, or 9 minutes of it. It knocks off the rest of it. So I've changed. I've looked on Google. I swear I just have problems with these things. There's way too many settings on them is what it is. So anyway, I changed the setting on here, and I'm going to see how that works. Anyway, so new GoPro, and that's why you haven't seen any videos, because I don't have any video. So hopefully this works. So there's been quite a bit happen, kind of, not really, but a little bit. So I've got Steve's car in the garage. It's now on this side of the garage, and the reason is I can get into this side of the car easier to work on, because before it was over here. It did get started for the first time this past Saturday. Jim showed up and Steve, and we got it running. It actually scared the crap out of me. When Jim got here, he unhooked the coil wire and told me to turn it over until the oil pressure gauge come up. So we did have to crank on it for about 20 or 30 seconds. He did prime the engine when he built it, but that was a long time ago. And anyways, when the oil pressure gauge finally came up, then he plugged the coil wire in, and by then it had already pumped all the fuel up here. I had gas and a cup out. I was going to pour some gas down the carburetor, but anyway, the air cleaner was off of it, and I looked down in the carburetor and hit the butterflies, and fuel shot out of it. So I went back in there and I hit the key, and it started right up and scared the crap out of me. Wasn't expecting it to start right up, and it actually started and ran for a second or two and then died. But anyway, I had the timing pretty close. Anyway, we did have to advance it a little bit, but it ended up running. We do have some carburetor issues. Steve's bought a new carburetor. It hasn't come in yet. And we also got the car running and everything, turned the idle screw up and let it break in a little bit. We got a rocker arm clack over here. It's not an exhaust leak, it's a rocker arm. So we shut the car off, took the valve cover off. Jim kind of messed with the rocker arms a little bit. And we put the valve cover back on, started the car back up, and it was still there. Took the valve cover off, did it again, still there. He seems to think the rocker arm is pretty sloppy on there, like it's worn. So these are most likely the original rocker arms from 1964. So you can imagine there's probably a lot of wear on them, because I don't know how many miles is on them. But anyway, Steve ordered a new set of roller tip rockers, so we're going to put those on. Those aren't in yet either. Well, they may be by now, but anyway, so hopefully that fixes it, but I am concerned that it could be a bad new lifter, because that's kind of common nowadays to put a brand new hydraulic flat tappet cam in, and you could have 1 or 2 bad lifters or more or whatever. But anyway, I'm hoping that's not what it is, but hopefully the roller tip rockers fix it. If anything, he's going to get 15 horsepower more out of it anyway, a roundabout, we'll say, with the roller tips on there. But anyway, the carburetor it's just an old used 600 Edelbrock that he actually had on a farm truck. So I don't know how old that carburetor is. It was very dirty and dirty. It was very gritty when you turn the throttle on it. When I first took it off of took it at his house and started to take it apart, it was gritty, like it had dirt and sand or something all over it. He used it on the farm, so it's probably had a bunch of dirt around it and everything. But anyway, I took everything apart, cleaned it, put a new gaskets and accelerator pump in it, had the jets out of it, cleaned everything, and put it back on the car. That was like in 2019 or 2020 or something. I don't remember, 2021. Anyway, we only fired the car up for like 10 or 15 seconds, but it ran okay then. But the car set, that carburetor set with fuel in it for a couple of years, so it's most likely got gunked up again. But we did notice that the throttle is up and down. When you'd mess with the throttle, give it a little throttle, the idle was kind of up and down on it, like it had a vacuum leak. But if you grab the linkage and kind of pull on it up and down, it was changing the idle. So the throttle shaft, in my opinion, is worn. So Steve went ahead and ordered an AVS2 Edelbrock, which is the new design Edelbrock carburetor. If you're not familiar, they have annular, I guess, down leg boosters in them, and they atomize fuel better, and it gives crisper throttle response for bottom end. So anyway, he bought a brand new carburetor, and the good thing is everything that's bolted on this carburetor will go over to that one. So we got an issue with the transmission dipstick. We're not sure what brand this is. He bought this like in 2019 or something, I think he said. This has a metal rod wire on it, and it's not very flexible, and it won't go in the transmission. The big tall fitting that goes into the transmission with the O-ring on it, it has a big edged shoulder in it down in there, so that dipstick is hitting that. It needs to be chamfered so it'll slide in, and it's just a cheap one, so that's what we've got into. So he ordered a low-car dipstick. It has a nylon on it. That's what I have on my car. I have the black edition, the Midnight Series, I think they call it, on my car. So, I've got to change that out. I finally got the battery cable all finalized and everything. It was a big mess with the clamp size. I ended up getting the correct size clamps and got everything all put on. And when I finally rerouted that cable the way I wanted it, where it was out of the harm's way and everything, the cable that we had on here before was about 2 inches too short. So luckily, I had an extra trunk mount battery kit, identical. I had 2 of those, and I think I gave him the one back in like 2019 or whatever when I first started going to his house and working on it. So I ended up getting that box back down and putting the new cable on. So anyway, I ended up pulling the whole cable off and change it all out. It was not fun, but it's the right length now. So anyway, got that all off without a hitch. I went to the gas station. I got 3 gallons of 91 octane and a gas jug to come back and put gas in this car. This has the electronic gas door set up in it. Normally they have a gas fill door right here, and they've welded it up, and it's got the electric gas door. And it's a neat thing that you can get for these 55s. The switch is mounted under here. And anyway, when I took the battery out of my truck to put in here, because Steve's battery that he had won't hold a charge, I put my battery in there out of my truck, and I turned the key on, and then I flipped that switch and nothing was happening. So the gas door wasn't opening. This is the setup on this thing. This whole rig is for that gas door. So anyway, I did not install this. This was already installed. I did mount that up here. That was just laying in the car, and I mounted it up there. So what I ended up doing was I pulled the relays all off and was messing with that, kept trying the switch, and I ended up having the ground cable off at one point and put it back on, and miraculously it started working. So the gas door finally came open. So those things, I can tell you, I'm not really a huge fan, but just because of that, because it's all electronic now. There's no fail-safe. You go somewhere on a trip, if you're out of state or something, and your gas door doesn't open, maybe they have a trick of a jumper you can do to make that actually open in an emergency. I don't know, but if that gas door doesn't open, you can't put gas in your car. So if you're out of gas somewhere and your gas door won't open, I don't know what you're supposed to do. But anyway, it is working now, so thank goodness for that. I had one heck of a time with this Classic Instruments gauge setup. That was a new experience for me there. These are all electronic. There's no mechanical stuff about this. So simplification is out the door pretty much for that. They do not send you extra length wire to go out to your sending units on your engine, your oil pressure sending unit, and your temperature gauge sending unit. So I had to order wire off eBay, an assortment of different colors, to have all the colors I need to run out there. It's just a good deal that I got on it. But anyway, I had to make my own harness and run it out there and hook that stuff up, because we needed a temp gauge and oil pressure gauge for sure to see when we fired the engine if all that stuff was working. The speedometer itself is not hooked up yet. And of course, this is an all electronic rig now, and I've got to mess with that. So anyway, that I don't have the instructions. We lost the instruction sheet, and he ended up printing it off. I don't have a printer here, so he printed that off at his work and brought it to me Saturday, and I haven't got back in there and got to messing with it again. So anyway, all 4 gauges on the top are working. The fuel gauge works, voltage, everything. The battery was charging. So anyway, that all works except the speedo. I need to wire that up. It was a little interesting to try to do that, going in there to Google and looking at it. So, and then coming back out, and I wrote all the wiring diagram down, but there's some of it that doesn't make sense to me. There's one wire that says 5 volts to SN15 or 95 or something. I don't know what SN15 or SN95. I don't remember exactly what it was. I don't know what that is. Hopefully it doesn't need it. But anyway, there was a speedometer power wire or something, and it's brown, but the one on the harness for the speedo cable that came with it there's red, white, and black, I think. So I didn't know which of those 3 went on there. So anyway, now that I have instructions, I can figure that out. But it has been a mess, man. I'm not a big fan of a bunch of electronic crap on an old car. I like keeping my old cars pretty simple. That way it's all easy to repair, easy to maintain, and cheap to fix. But I get it. There's lots of guys out there that want all this new fancy stuff, you know, electric crap on their old cars to modernize them, make them a lot more comfortable, we'll say. But anyway, so pretty happy about that. He ended up buying a new battery, brought it Saturday, and it's a pretty big dude. What is the cold cranking amps on that? 900 cold cranking amps, which is good for a trunk mount battery, because you have to pull all the juice from all the way back here to up there. But we do have a mini starter on the car now, and you know, that definitely helps. So you know, a little bit smaller of a battery could probably be used, but that will be fantastic. So what else? I'll go ahead and stop this one in chapter again. All right, so this is a project I started probably a week and a half ago, and it's just been off and on messing with it. So this is a low car floor shifter for his overdrive automatic in the floor, and I had installed this in his car before at his house, but that was before we found out that the transmission crossmember had been installed way too low in the frame, so the transmission was hanging way down, so there was no interference. So now that the new chassis is under the car and the engine and transmission is properly set up in there with 3 degrees down at the tranny and the carb pad on 0, the transmission case is very close to the top of the tunnel, because these cars didn't have large transmissions in them in '55. When you go putting modern or newer transmissions in, they're bigger, especially a 700R4. So you run into a little bit of clearance issues with something like this, with a mechanical style, you know, Heim joint, all thread style linkage setup. So anyway, now I'm having problems with this hitting the transmission case. So my idea was to raise the shifter up to get it up off of the floor. So I ended up buying a big piece of sheet metal and took it to a buddy's house to an English wheel and rolled it to where it was kind of more of a hump. And I drilled holes in it and everything, kind of set it up in there, and was messing with it, and it's flexing because the sheet metal I got was a little bit thinner. So it was actually flexing. So I kind of abandoned that idea. I was going to tack weld it. It was basically going to be just a bigger transmission tunnel spot put under there. And this is my second design here, and I think this might work. So anyway, this is made out of 1/8 inch plate and 1/8 inch strap. So I took this to a buddy's place and used a slip roll on this, which ended up, his slip roll was a little bit bigger, so I ended up using just a corner of it to roll these tight edges. But I basically shaped it the same as the shift boot ring. This is for the shift boot, so it's the same exact diameter. This is stout, so there is no way this is going to flex. I am going to tack weld this to the trans tunnel and then seam seal it, and that way when the shifter is being moved, this doesn't flex. The other thing about it was I welded nuts to the bottom of it, 4 nuts for these bolts right here, to bolt the shifter to it, so that you don't have to have a wrench on the bottom of it. Obviously, you can just bolt it in from the top and be done. Then I drilled and tapped these holes in this, which was not fun because this is 1/8 inch thick. I did chamfer it with a chamfering bit just a little bit, but Anyway, they send you regular old screws with this ring, just a regular old 1/8" screw, Phillips screw. So I had a package of stainless 832 countersink Allen heads here, which will be more trick in there. And I'm not going to charge him for those because I have a bag of 100 there. I'll probably never ever use all those. So I ended up putting that on there and marking it and then going in and drilling and tapping them. And I got all the screws in the ring except 2 of them. I had one here and one here that was off just enough that I couldn't get the screw to start. So I ended up running all the screws back down. I chamfered these quite a bit bigger and then welded it all up and then went back and ground it. So now I've got to pull the screws back out. I'm going to screw this down and then I'm going to use a drill bit that's the same diameter as the hole, which is what I should have done to begin with, and kind of stick it down in there and mark it, because this is aluminum. It would actually open it up bigger. I'm going to get a mark started in this. Then I'm going to go in and drill and tap these, and then the last 2 should go in there. But this will screw flat to that, and then the shifter will bolt to that. Now I still have to cut a notch in this for the mechanical linkage to go through. So this has just been kind of a mess. It kind of looks like a sardine can in a way, but this thing is heavy, man. This is going to work really nice. But that's what I've been up against on this shifter setup, and hopefully this will work. However, I think because the plate that bolts onto this, it comes out at an angle like this, so when you shift it, that arm moves back and forth. What I think I've decided to do is I'm going to cut this right here and here, and then slice it down through there just enough to get those tack welds broke loose. And I'm going to pull this out at an angle pretty good, and then go back and fill it up with weld, and then retack the top. And then that will be a little extra added area for that side angle linkage that this thing has. But I think this will work great. He bought an ACC molded carpet set for this car, so it's pre-molded to the car, to the floor, and it's a one-piece unit. And it has jute padding glued to the bottom of it, and that jute padding's pretty thick. So I'm going to cut out the jute padding just a hair bigger than that, and then that way when the carpet set's put in there, it'll just be the carpet on this. It won't have the jute on it. So it should fit just like it's supposed to, in theory, I'll say. But anyway, hopefully this works. I did think about offsetting this a little bit to the driver's side, but it would drive me nuts because it's not dead center of that trans tunnel, you know what I mean? But I'm going to try this, and hopefully this works. So, big mess. Not a fan of that stuff. I'm an automatic on the column kind of guy, unless it's a stick shift car, but for an automatic, I want mine on the column. But this will look cool in there to give it that 4-speed, you know, old school look, which is kind of what he's going for, the old school look anyway. But, man, what a mess this has been, let me tell you. So, what else? I'll go ahead and cut off this chapter. So Steve was going to go with Vintage Air, and then when he calculated the cost of buying the unit, paying it to have it installed and then charged, we was going to have to get a different, was going to have to get an electric fan and a radiator with a port in it to put an electric fan probe in it and stuff. It was going to be a pretty expensive cost, so he decided that he wasn't going to do AC now, just to put the factory heater back in. So when the guys did the firewall, smoothed it, welded everything up, they welded the 2 heater hose holes in the firewall over here, which I think are right in the way of that transmission dipstick bracket now that I have to change. But anyway, now there's 2 holes in the firewall, which I could probably cheat it over and still have enough room to cover. I could get that over a little bit, you know what I mean, and still the bracket would cover the old holes. So that is a possibility, but I got to wait until low car comes in, because if the bracket that goes to the firewall is bigger, it might end up working out. But I basically have to open up the 2 holes in the firewall to put the factory heater box in. So, and the heater box will have to be taken apart, restored, new heater core, new heater valve put in. I think he has new cables in there in a box I think I seen, so that should go off without a hitch. So before you start saying, well, he should probably just go ahead and put air in it. Guys, you got to understand, he's got a lot of money in this car at this point. And it's not just spending, you know, $1,500 or $1,800, however much it is for a vintage air kit. You have to pay somebody to install it. It's not a 2-hour job. It's a lot of hours. It is not recommended to run a flex fan, although people do. But when it's 100-degree temps and you're stuck in traffic, you're going to overheat. So electric fan is the way to go. I like electric fans on my stuff. And the main reason is you're getting more airflow at idle than you are going down the highway. So if you have a car with an old mechanical fan on it, like a 55 or Tri-5, whatever, Chevelle, I don't care what it is, and you got an old flex fan or something on it, and it's getting hot in traffic or at stoplights, but once you get going on the highway, the temperature drops and it cools down, you don't have enough airflow, so the fan's not pulling enough. So electric fan, if it's like a 2,000 or 3,000 CFM fan, it's pulling that much air, more than what you're going to get going down the highway at idle, and it's not going to overheat. I can leave my car sitting out in the sun idling all day long in 100-degree heat, and it doesn't get but about 185 degrees. So I will always be running electric fans. So on my personal cars. I was going to put a mechanical old steel blade fan on my wife's four-door, but I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and put electric on it because I don't want any issues. And, you know, put a fan probe on it. It comes on automatically. You don't have to mess with a switch under the dash that you might forget and that type of crap. So anyway, Steve's car doesn't have another port in the engine to put that temp probe. It has 2 spots in the intake, and one of them's for a heater hose outlet and the other one's for the temp gauge, so in the dash. So he needs the radiator that has a port in it, or this will have to be hole sawed and somebody TIG weld up an aluminum fitting on there or something. It'd be better just to get another radiator. That's just one of them $100 jobbies from eBay anyway. But anyway, that's where that is. So big mess there. So back when I wired this car for Steve, that's probably been 10, 12, 13 years ago. I don't even remember, maybe longer. I had put a radio in it and some Pioneer 6x9 speakers that I got from Walmart, I think, for it back there. And those speakers are, you know, 15 years old, probably around there. And I haven't seen them. They're at his house somewhere. I think they're in a tote with the heater box, actually. I asked him if he checked out the 6x9s because we were just going to put them back in here. But I am betting that the foam around them is probably rotted. So once they start getting used, they're probably just going to fall apart anyway. And they were cheap at Walmart back then. So I told him to go ahead and just get a new set of speakers. So I got on Amazon and actually found a deal on some 3.5 two-way speakers with 6x9s, and I don't remember the price, but it was a good buy. So that's what he bought. So now he has kicker 6x9 three-ways for the rear deck and 3.5s to put in the front. So anyway, I took one of the 6x9s and I got back there and went to stick it in there, and it's not going down in the deck. So I don't remember. I didn't cut that out. They were already cut out before. But these cars are not cut out for a 6x9 over there, in case you don't know that. That's a plain blank over there. The only speaker you got in these cars was right here in the rear deck, a 6x9, and you got a 6x9 in the dash on that side over there where that rounded spot is. So that was their idea, surround sound. And they only came with the front speaker. The rear speaker, I believe, was an option you had to check the box on. So anyway, the speakers don't fit down in there, and you can kind of see, if you can see through the window, the hole they cut back there is not, my OCD butt did not do that, I promise you. So I obviously had his old ones mounted under there, or they actually fit, I don't remember. But, you know, I'm going to have to mount these underneath because I don't want to go in there and try trimming all that out with the back glass in the car. That's all I need is to scratch a brand new back glass, you know what I mean? So anyway, I'm going to mount the speakers underneath, and then he has to put a package tray back here anyway, and we'll probably just put the grills over the top. So, since we're not doing vintage air, his car was pre-cut out for air conditioning vents in the dash. So, he had bought these. I think these are reproductions. These are factory air dash vents. These are technically for a 56 because they have a gun sight in the center of them. 55s were just open. They didn't have anything there. So you can stick your fingers down in there. Which I like the gun sight ones better. I think these are cooler anyway. But these are repops, I believe. They could be re-chromed, I don't know. I actually didn't know that if they reproduced these or not, so that's why I'm saying they could be re-chromed originals, but regardless, they've been redone. They're new, well, looking now. We were going to run the hoses from the vintage air to these so the dash vents would actually work. So now that we're putting the factory heater in there, I told him I had always thought about putting a couple of pieces of muffler pipe and hole sawing the heater box and running two flex hoses to the factory AC ducts where your heater would blow out of the floor, your defrost, or, you know, and up here on your dash. However, I told him about my rig and he fell in love with the idea. So what I ended up coming up with, don't laugh, this will work. These are header collectors, 2.5 inch, and I've cut them down. And then I took just some sheet metal and I hole sawed holes in there and then tack welded this to that. But the speaker, you know, goes on there like that. Bolted the speaker on. And then I had some intercooler hose. It's 2.5 inch is what that is. These factory things take 2.5 inch ductwork. So this is an intercooler turbo hose that I just had as a spare piece over there. It's probably off one of my old Grand National Buicks. And I cut one of them in half, and I'm going to put 2 hose clamps on here. But anyway, that will set right down in there like that, and I can tighten the clamps down, and then these will screw into the back of these, and you'll actually have speakers in there. So pretty neat setup there, but it doesn't alter these at all. It's just hose clamped hose. So if at any time he does put air on it, these can be taken off and the proper ducts put on. So I didn't want to alter those. So that's kind of what I come up with for that. And it should work. Although when I tried mocking that up, there's a brace right here on the dash that it's kind of hitting a little bit. So I may have to go in there and die grind that down a little bit. I haven't looked at that side yet. It looks a little lower, but I haven't test fitted or anything. But anyway, that's where the speakers will be. So that's the sound system side. So I figured I'd show what I was talking about on my car. He actually thought I had air conditioning, and I do not. I just have a factory deluxe heater that I restored and put in here with a new heater core and valve. These are exhaust tips with rolled edge that I got from Pet Boys before they shut down and just started doing tires up here in Tulsa. They used to sell accessories and parts and stuff, but these are exhaust tips. And I liked them because they're angled and they had a rolled edge on them. And then I took all the stuff out of them and welded metal mesh in the back and built a bracket on the back, and those speakers bolt on. So it's kind of about the same setup, but this is my speakers. I have kicker 3.5s behind mine. It looks like factory air, but it's actually speakers because the only speaker you got on these cars was right here and in the rear deck back there. So anyway, I've never seen that before. I just thought it was kind of neat, and I always try to do something a little bit different and outside the box, and definitely on a budget. But I like to keep my stuff simple. I never wanted to put air conditioning on this car. Don't get me wrong, air conditioning's nice, no doubt. But it also jumbles up an engine compartment. You've got an AC compressor on. I bought that fancy aluminum bracket to put my alternator down low. So, you know, I didn't want AC compressor and hoses and all that crap over here with this cold air duct that I made out of the factory air cleaner. So, to me, I keep my stuff simple and mechanical. And when it breaks, it's easy for me to fix and easy to work on. But I do have to sweat. However, even though the car is black, since the entire inside of the car is dynamated, including the entire roof dynamated, when I leave that car out in the sun with that reproduction Easy Eye green tinted glass, it is not that hot in that car. And then once I get going down the road with the cowl vents open, it's very nice. So anyway, I'm happy about that. I don't have anything to report on the 355 that Randy gave me from Texas. I have not touched this since the last video you saw, so this car's been sitting for several weeks. Although I did move it over there at one point so I could mow over here, and then I moved it back over here so I could mow over there the other day, and then I still haven't moved it again. I need to air the tire up again, but anyway, that car has just been sitting. I haven't touched it. I had to work on my truck. My air conditioner compressor went out. My wife and her family was meeting up at her mom's place to clean up the yard. They had a whole big pile of limbs they had to move. So she wanted to take my truck. So I put the air conditioning compressor on there and recharged it and got it fixed. The AC's been working on the truck for the last couple of years, but the remanufactured compressor that I put on there sounded like it had a rod knocking in it, and it started smoking. So anyway, I ended up taking the belt off and unplugging the switch on the side of the dryer, and I've been driving it without AC, but I didn't want her to drive an hour and 20 minutes or whatever with no AC in 100-degree heat. So anyway, the compressor, they warrantied it out, so it worked out pretty good. They wouldn't warranty out the Freon. But anyway, I had to put a couple cans of Freon in it. I actually owe my dad a can of Freon, which I have not bought yet, but I will. So anyway, I haven't been to Walmart yet to get another can of Freon. But anyway, so the AC's fixed on the truck, and she enjoyed it. She drove it down there and back, and I told her not to hot rod it, not to get on it and try to, you know, gun it and pass somebody, because the transmission starts sliding. I'm gonna have to rebuild that 704 in that. So it's always something with old cars, but I'll take it, you know what I mean? But anyway, guys, I think that's about where I'm at. I don't know if I talked about the gauges or not. Better talk about that. So Steve had bought a Classic Instruments, what's that called? Bel Air 3 setup for this car. And I tried to install this at his house back in, like, I don't know when that was, 2019, 2020, 2021, I don't remember. Anyway, it comes with a glass lens, non-tempered, just regular old glass. And they give you these little rubber, clear, little sticky bumpers to put on there so it doesn't break the glass, I guess. But when I screwed the back onto the original bezel, it busted the lens in half. So I tried plexiglass from Lowe's, and every time I tried to cut it out, I tried 2 different pieces, it cracked. Somebody had said to get polycarbonate, so I got on eBay and bought a sheet of polycarbonate, which is a lot more expensive than plexiglass. And I cut it out, and then I actually used a die grinder, or my angle grinder with a Roloc disc on it, to properly get it fit right, and it worked awesome. So anyway, this is a polycarbonate lens that I put on there. But anyway, this was a mess. We lost the instruction sheet from all this time, and I had to go in there on Google and look it up, and I don't have a printer, so I basically wrote everything down on a piece of notebook paper and come out here, and I was trying to wire this up because we needed to have gauges to start the car for the first time, you know what I mean? Anyway, when it come to the speedometer stuff, that's where I kind of was having a little bit of trouble. Everything's electronic now, it's not mechanical, so the speedometer's electronic and all the gauges. But anyway, I called Steve, told him I was having a little bit of trouble. He has a printer at his work, so he printed out the instruction sheet, so that's pretty awesome. So now, I haven't been in here yet, but I have to pull this back out. It's just sitting in here, so I do have to pull it out and wire up the speedo. But anyway, all 4 of those upper gauges are working. The gas gauge looks like it's got the proper amount in it, because I only put 3 gallons in it. The battery was charging, it was over 13. I think it's about 185 is what the temperature got up to and stayed. So everything, all the gauges are working except the speedo. However, when I turn the key on, the speedo, you know, does go over and back. I think that's the way all them gauges do when you turn these on. Kind of neat. But anyway, it's a new bezel. It fits the dash pretty good. However, the bezel for the other side will not fit in the dash. So I think I'm gonna have to trim the mesh down. That is an aftermarket set that he bought. This is not Danchuck, it's another brand, and that's actually the brand right there. And anyway, this is a quartz clock that was a Danchuck brand that he had bought, and I put it in. I went to put the script in, the new gold script. The holes that were already in this screen, that would not fit. I had to drill those a little bit bigger to get that to fit down in there, which I thought was lame. However, see how high that mesh sets up out of there? That sets pretty high. And this will not go into the dash, so I think I'm gonna have to go in and grind that mesh down even with that bezel to get that to go in there. Hopefully it'll fit after I do that. But anyway, just more, you know, it's aftermarket parts. Thankfully there are companies that make aftermarket parts. I just wish they'd do a little R&D to make sure the stuff fits before they put it on the market to sell it, you know what I mean? It's not that difficult to do. But I guess when you have to turn around and retool something, I guess that's more of a cost than they want to mess with. But if all I got to do is grind that mesh down a little bit with a grinder and then it fit, I'm good with that. So anyway, I want to finish up this mess today, but I'll see how that goes. But anyway, I think I talked about this. I'm going to be tack welding this onto the floor, and that's to raise it up. And hopefully that's enough room for this linkage piece to fit out over the side of that like that. This will be under the car, and then this is what hooks to the transmission, is this rig here. So this has been a mess, man. Every little thing, when you get down to the wire on this little stuff like this, this is this is the crap, this aftermarket stuff. This is where you spend the time. I'm a huge believer in mock-up. I mocked up probably 99% of my 55 before I went through and did all the metalwork, bodywork, and paint, which some of the prefab I did was metalwork. But the end result when you do that, when you have all your parts and you do that, is astonishing. This car turned out fabulous, and it went together very nice because I mocked everything up. But not everybody can do that, you know what I mean? So I spent 10 years on my car. That's why. But anyway, I can tell you from how I feel, when this car came here to my house, this car is leaps and bounds better than it was when I got it. So this is definitely a nice car now. Don't get me wrong, it was a nice car before, but it is way nicer now. We got a nice straight frame that's not butchered. The transmission and engine and everything is properly installed, so it shouldn't have a vibration in it. I mean, this thing is going to be awesome. So I'm pretty excited to get it done. But man, it's too dark under here. You can see where I put the cherry bombs. This is temporary exhaust, guys. I just have it wired at the back, and I clamped it at the front. He's going to take this to his muffler shop of his choice, which he has a place that he uses, and I know they're going to relocate those back further. So this is all I did here. I put some 45-degree bends, which I trimmed down and everything and welded to the collectors, and then I clamped it at the front, and I drilled a small 1/8-inch hole way back here for the wire and just wired it up through the foot brace in the floor up there so he can cut this wire off and pull it off. But when he puts the pipe on this to weld it, he can weld that hole right there on both of them. But that'll keep it from falling off while he's driving it, and it won't be so loud, you know what I mean? Can't run it open header because it just burned the paint off the frame. He's planning on driving the car home when he picks it up from here, and then he'll have to take it to a alignment shop for the front end, and then it'll have to be taken to an exhaust shop. So if he can drive it, because he doesn't have a trailer the car will go on, he won't have to have somebody trailer the car everywhere for him and scratch up the frame paint and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, the next big progress problem is probably going to be the steering column, because it's an I don't know what brand it is actually. I'm assuming it's I Did It. I don't know. Tilt column, and I have to install it, and there's a lot of wiring on those, so I'm going to have to do again. Get on Google and find out what the wiring schematic is for that I Did It column to go to this aftermarket wiring harness that's in this car. So that's going to be another fiasco, I'm sure. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. This video is long enough, but that's pretty much the update. Not a whole lot to report. So, but it is close. And as you can see, all the Kragers are on, the spinners are on, and it's looking really, really nice, man. Thanks for watching.